We're live.
We have an amazing lineup of some really, really cool guests. And this season, I want to totally spotlight law enforcement. We're going to kick it off with Wayne Bullier, who is from the police academy across the street, Broward College. So he's going to talk about entry-level training, recruit training, what goes into the curriculum. A whole bunch of other guests that are going to come on that are going to talk about family relationships within police families. And we're going to have our very own dean on, Dr. Durham. Remember, this is the brainchild of Dr. Durham to do investigation with Dr. T. It's her idea. She is going to talk about what is it like to be a mother of a first responder. One of the things that I really hope the audiences will come away with is an understanding and an appreciation and an empathic view of police officers.
So tonight we have Dr. Kimberly Durham, the Dean of Fischler College of Education and the School of Criminal Justice, and I'm so excited about tonight. She is the Dean of the School of the College. She spent over 20 years developing and overseeing human services, criminal justice, and health-related research, academic programs, curriculum, and clinical programs. And prior to her role at the Fischler College, she served as chair of the Department of Justice and Human Services within the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences at Nova. Remember when they used to call it that? It was CAS, and now it's HUMOS. So Dr. Durham has served on numerous academic and community council boards, committees throughout her professional career. She served as community liaison for all NSU clinics for 15 years. And in collaboration with community partners, she's facilitated a number of initiatives aimed at easing the transition to civilian life for those who are returning from the military. She's done this work with them, the vets, as well as their families at the NSU's Veteran Resource Center. In addition, Dr. Durham provides oversight for the NSU Broward Sheriff's Office partnership, which has resulted in educational and research opportunities, national and local conferences, and community outreach for Broward Sheriff's Office employees and the community. That is a lot, and there's so much more. Believe me when I tell you that Dr. Durham does so much behind the scenes that your head would explode. So please, 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 please welcome Dr. Kimberly Durham, the Dean of Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice. And, look, investigation with Dr. T, I don't know how many, years now we're doing this, but I remember my first year sitting in your office and getting reviewed, my annual review. I was new, so I was a rookie. And, you were talking to me about some really wonderful stuff that Dr. Maribel Del Rio was doing with autism, and that she was working with father of autism, I think it was, right? And you were like, yeah. Is there anybody in criminal justice that you could maybe do like some kind of talk show or something like that? And, and so then the rest is history. So this is your show. You are the executive producer of it. And I hope that you've enjoyed and liked everything that we've done so far. But tonight is my favorite night of all because it's you. It's about you. And
well, that's so kind of you, because it really is an honor. And when you asked me, I really felt very honored that I could be with you and with all the students that you work with all the time, because what you and I envisioned way back then has just gone, light years beyond what I hoped it could be. And I just want to commit more and more and more and educate students more and give them opportunities. And also your guests are just, each one is just more amazing than the next. So I enjoy everything about it. And I'm a big, big, big cheerleader and supporter. And I really am honored, and thank you for having me tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying yes, because I know you're in the middle of a, like I don't want to say a perfect storm because it isn't perfect, but we're in flux right now, reimagining new strategic plans, all this work that we're involved with to make things better for our students. It's all about the students, right? And so we want to engage the students. That's why Investigation with Dr. T is so cool, because not only is it educational, but each guest becomes a possible network, a possible contact for our students. So,
and you've parlayed that into many, many activities and opportunities for them to be a part of.
yes, yes. This is all about, I mean, if you're watching us and you were like thinking, should I go to NSU? And what does NSU have to offer? Wow, now's the time for you to join because we're doing some really, really cool things and a lot of experiential work, a lot of interactive, engaging things, and networking and partnerships. And so this season for Investigation with Dr. T, we've been talking a lot about law enforcement. And so you bring this really unique, it's just really unique because it's education, it's psychology, and also you are a mother of a law enforcement officer. And so this season we're talking about law enforcement and we're putting a human face on law enforcement because there's many times where, people have a preconceived notion or a preconceived idea about what police officers are or deputies or first responders. And we're human. We're not recruited from another planet. We're recruited from here, and we take the job because we want to help people. Like that's really the reason. And so you're the dean of the college, which encompasses education, criminal justice, and human services. So how do you see these disciplines intersecting, especially in today's climate?
Well, I'll admit it has some difficulties from time to time. I mean, we've been through ups and downs, and those three units that you referenced have been together now for I want to say pretty close to 7 years. And my hope was always that that the educators would get beyond the very great work that they do, which is, educating students to become teachers, or maybe they want to become principals or assistant principals or superintendents. We have many, many renowned people that have graduated from our program. So great for them and some of the things that they're doing with respect to alumni for us. But I'd always pictured that education would get a little bit beyond that and would begin to recognize the opportunities and the rewards with partnering with something like human services. Human services was all kind of built under the aspect of helping others, whether it be through developmental disabilities and, our own autism spectrum, or the school that we now oversee for preschoolers, which is a pride point for us. But also just in human services development in general, administration. Maybe you want to go into leadership roles and go into an agency or something like that. And then with criminal justice, it was similar because you touched on it right there at the end when you were doing the intro. And that's that it all starts from wanting to help others. So if you take that all together, to me, there's no amount of creativity or innovation that you could spare to any one of those conversations and trying to come up with partnerships. I know that we as a college are very proud of you, Dr. Telesco, because you sort of set the standard for engagement with students beyond the classroom, which is where we want to be in total. And in addition to that, you've also reached across the aisle, if you will, to human services and reached out to some of those folks to create partnerships, your sociodramas. In addition to that, you've reached out to the School of Psychology. And that's what really today, in my opinion, in leading an organization like this that has some diverse aspects to it, it's finding the commonalities, coming together, helping the people. What can you contribute to that in that collaboration, whether it be psychology or human services or the like. But I think that we are starting to do that more than I had hoped at this point. I know it takes a little bit of getting used to the different disciplines, but I think what I see ahead of us is really great, especially with the addition that we've put in place in the last couple of years, which is the research component and the research incentive dollars. That will spark some individuals, some faculty, and we have one in particular that's won that sort of contest that Dr. Mills put together. But I think when those things start to kick off, the enthusiasm of wanting to create more and more will come. But you certainly were a leading change agent for that.
Well, only with your encouragement. So you not only lead this college, right? And I don't know if anybody understands this, but there's like there's the university and then there's all these colleges, right? And within the colleges are departments or schools. And so that's like a huge responsibility and a lot of authority. Um, so you not only lead this college and steer the ship, but you also are a mother, and you're a grandmother too. But we're going to talk about you being a mother of a law enforcement officer and what that feels like and how do you balance this professional and personal perspectives. And then I'm going to have like a little bit of a follow-up question, but tell us what it's like to like wear these two hats, and how do they work for you?
Well, sometimes I want to be very honest and transparent, and sometimes they don't go exactly the way that I would hope them to go, as far as my feelings, or sometimes letting emotions get away from you. But I can remember when it actually was before my son really made any noise about wanting to be in law enforcement. And he first started with veterans and law enforcement are my two favorite groups that I really enjoy working with. And I like to put a lot of projects together with respect to that. But as I was a single mother, so as he was growing up, and he kept referring to or asking questions about law enforcement, he had the opportunity, which is why, meeting and getting to know faculty and really letting faculty speak to students and mentor them as best they can is really so very valuable. Because I remember that there was a faculty member in criminal justice years ago. He's retired now, but he was quite good, spent lots of time with the students and kind of had that open door policy. And my son was getting his master's degree, got his bachelor's degree here, and then he went for his master's. And he was Tom was one of his faculty members, so he stopped in Tom's office quite a bit. Tom was a retired FBI agent and then went on to do teaching and things like that. So he gave him all of the sort of ins and outs, and whatever it was that their discussions were propelled him to do even more. So, wanting to be that supportive mother that wanted to make sure that whatever he was doing, that he was happy about. I, of course, was very supportive, but, scared too. That was a big switch for me. Like, it wasn't going to be some cushy job somewhere and protected. It was going to be exposed. And as he went through the academy, they have that night for parents that you go, and I went for that night for parents, and boy, they don't pull any punches. They let you know as a parent exactly what to look for, or if you're a spouse. And my daughter-in-law was sitting next to me, so we started comparing notes and those kind of things. And the realization came that no matter where my son was in the training process, because it's true, he did have to do overnights first, which were very scary. I mean, I can tell you a funny story that I downloaded an app once that you can actually listen to live police calls. And the first time that I heard his voice at like 3 a.m, I had to switch off, and then I just completely deleted the app, because it was not something that I was going to be able to do on a regular basis, because I just was anticipating so many things. But then, he went on from that, and he went into a specialized area, which he truly enjoys. And he has 2 little boys, my grandsons, and they really adore their father, and they emulate him in many, many ways. But I think the most significant thing that makes it easier for me, because it's never easy. You worry as a mother, but the most significant thing for me is that he has a very, very, very supportive spouse. So this is somebody that is a friend, a best friend, will listen to him, sit and listen to stories or whatever it is that might be on his mind. And I think that helps tremendously. He
Yes.
also is really good at, and I've actually seen him do this, will get out of the car and go into the house and just become a dad. So it'll be, let me go switch out of my uniform and then come out and be a completely different person. And it's really remarkable, because, one of the little ones will say, let's go fishing or something. And he'll say, I'm on it. Let's go get the bait and do what we need to do. So I'm proud of him for that, because I know it's not easy. But I do think having a supportive spouse is a good thing. I have tremendous faith and trust in him. I think his coworkers that he's very bonded with, equally faith and trust in them. And I'm just one of those individuals that I'm happy he gets to do what he's happy about doing, and whatever that means. And it's a balance. How do I do that with work? Work is a passion of mine. So I dive right into anything, any areas that we can build. And, we're going through a big strategic plan right now for all of the different disciplines. So those things make me very happy, and they balance me out. So I think it's, sometimes it's complicated, sometimes it's easy, but, we get by.
So you're talking a lot here. You're kind of covering the next question anyway, but you talked a little bit about the emotional toll that this could take on families. You're a psychologist. So you're like, that's what I said before. You have like all these different hats that you wear. Have you ever had a conversation, just you and your son, about mental health stigma in law enforcement? I'm former law enforcement, 20 years NYPD, and I know what it's like to feel hesitant to tell anyone on the job or anyone that's remotely, connected to anybody on the job if you're feeling some kind of way, stressed out, um, anxiety, insomnia, like any of that stuff. Afraid to kind of talk about it because you're afraid you're going to get punished for it, or you're afraid your guns are going to get taken away, or they're going to think you're crazy and they're going to put you on a desk. Have
Right.
you ever had these conversations with your son at all? And as a
No,
psychologist,
right.
yeah.
Well, having a clinical background does afford me the opportunity to watch for things. I do more watching. How is the family progressing? Are there any issues there? I watch for certain things. As I said before, I think that if he's going to share those kind of things, he's most likely going to share them with his spouse before me. I think in some ways he is very proud of me for the things that I've been able to accomplish, either, by his side or with him, being a very strong supporter. So he may have a little bit of a feeling of letting me down or something if he were to share, because I know he's very readily, sharing things with his spouse.
Right.
And again, she's very, very supportive. There was one time where there was an unfortunate situation in his area, and there was a suicide. And there was lots of emotions, lots of very, very real raw emotions from some of the other guys around those things. And I asked my son about it, and he said, I was one of the ones with one of his other partners that went to the scene and, had to then talk to the family and those kinds of things. And he said that was very, very difficult. I did use the opportunity to say, that is really hard. And it's hard to share those kind of things, with others. And I know that, you can always share this with your spouse or with me. And he knew that, of course, but I was also checking for, how did that go? Because that's a pretty rough scene for anybody.
Absolutely. And I think you hit a real important point here about when we're dealing with the families of victims. That's for me was the hardest. I could see blood, give me the blood, shoot at me, resist arrest, love it. Yes, but not the families, not the brokenheartedness, the grief, shock, all of that. Because I do believe that empathy, I don't think that empathy is evil, as some people are saying these days. I do think that empathy is what we need today, that we all belong to each other and that we are kin, where we are related to each other in some type of maybe even spiritual way. I don't know, but certainly that's the part that breaks our heart. And so how do you offer any kind of like advice or strategies that you might recommend to him or to even your daughter-in-law about how to stay resilient, how to build resilience against any stressors that he might face or bring home with him?
Well, if I could, I would approach it from the two vantage points. So one is the, coming in and working with all of our great, people that you and I work with all day long, and what do we do with that? Because we're faced with lots of change and some difficult, decisions to make and times, and or with him as well. It's kind of the same approach, I think, that serves best, and that is, in rocky times, whatever those rocky times are, whatever they mean to the individual person, I think it's very, very important to, if I'm making a statement or in a leadership role, that I'm setting the tone for acceptance and a feeling of belonging as part of the organization, a feeling that you do matter, that your voice matters, and what you have to say is important. Because I do think that it takes a village. So it's not just one or 10 or 20 people, it's an entire organization. And if everybody's working together and they're doing it in harmony, then that makes me happy. That feels like a victory to me. By the same token, I would say to my son and daughter-in-law, I guess the thing that pops into my head is they're extremely funny together. Like, hilarious funny, so they have these inside things, jokes and stuff as they parent their two boys. And I would say, and I have said to them in the past, don't lose that. That's special, and that laughter sometimes gets you through lots of things, but certainly does help to create a stronger bond between the people that you're leaning on. And I would go back to the workplace too, because you always have to have that one or two individuals in your life, if you're fortunate enough, that you could lean on, that you can, share things and they'll kind of right your ship. And I have that in Tammy. She's probably watching tonight, but she's been through more ups and downs with us, for years and years and years. So she knows all about that. She's pretty grounded. So she can, help you in those moments. But I would encourage everybody, if they don't have somebody like that, to look for somebody like that they can share with and, laugh about it or come up with a different plan or whatever it is, because I think that's very important.
Yeah. Now, this wasn't one of the questions, but you and I both know. Well, I'll keep it in the eye. All right. So I'm old enough to know that when I was little, well, I'm still little, but when I was younger, right, that being a cop was like a major thing. That was like a big thing. And everyone, like if you got in trouble with the police, your parents, forget it. Forget it. You wished that the police would take you away rather than have to deal with your parents. That's not the way it is today. That's totally different generation, totally different climate. That's one of the reasons I love Sheriff Ivy. He's no nonsense. Not everybody might agree with him, and that's fine. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. But what I love about him is that he supports his cops. He supports his law enforcement team. Now we've seen this like roller coaster of during 9/11, for example, 20 something years ago, everybody loved the police. Prior to 9/11, there was the Amadou Diallo incident and the Abner Louima incident in New York, and people, Susan Sarandon was like, protesting at the headquarters and getting arrested. Ozzie Davis, I don't know if you remember any of this, but
Yeah,
I was there, and I was a lieutenant at the time, and I was right in the middle of all of it. How do you handle that? And when the public seems to demonize the police, how do you handle it as a mother, and then as the dean of the college, and including the School of Criminal Justice? How do you handle that? How do you not get defensive with people?
Well, I'll be, again, very transparent. I'm human. I have gotten defensive with some people before, and then quickly come to the realization that I think it's important, even if it's a difficult exercise, I think it's important to try to see a scenario through somebody else's eyes. I think that if you meet that person one-on-one and you try to understand it, I think you have a far better outcome, meaning that you may not agree on everything, but you may find commonalities that you could build on. And I think that that's what we're lacking today That frustrates me more than anything. I say to even everybody in the college, it's the same thread. If you have differing opinions, because you would expect that. It used to be that we embraced that. It used to be that that was a good thing. The old adage of it made the world go around, all the differences that everybody had. Because I think that there were some basic commonalities beyond being a human being that people embraced. But that sort of thing has changed a bit, and I do have a way of handling it. It might not be the right way, but I look at all the contributors, because it's not just one issue anymore. It's not just that, somebody or a group decided that this group is now to be demonized and this isn't. It never happens that way anymore. There are always contributing factors. And every once in a while, you and I have this conversation, and I know I say this sometimes, and sometimes it isn't the appropriate venue to say it, but I think it's worth saying. Some of these things have been very politicized at this point, and there are contributors such as the media and I feel like sometimes I can pick up any article for something that happened, the night before with the police or something, and they find some aspect of it, the most minutest aspect, that wasn't in their mind done correctly. And my immediate response is to say to myself, well, you weren't there. So you don't really know what the situation is or what happened. I think it's important at that point then to listen to everybody, because I think that makes a difference. And the more that we group people and cordon them off and say this and that, I just think that that's not healthy for us. I just prefer to meet the person, whoever that might be, and make a connection in that way. I think that there's more commonalities if you take the time to look for them.
100%. And that was one of my motivations for this season, is to put a human face on law enforcement. And you mentioned the media, and the media can be like a force multiplier, meaning in a bad way. So taking this incident that occurred, and you're right, and everybody has like a video camera on their phone, and everybody's a journalist today. And when these things go viral, it's like, well, there's about maybe 20 minutes before that video, and about maybe 10 or 15 minutes after that video, but nobody's seeing that. And that's not to say, look, and I say it all the time on this podcast, as well as in the classroom. When a cop does something wrong, when a cop does something that's criminal, they lose that privilege of being a cop and getting the accolades. Like, they lose that, right? So they become a criminal then. So when I like put my knee on somebody's neck and I strangle them to death, I'm a criminal. I've just committed a murder, right? So I'm not a cop. So forget about that. But I know, like, for myself on social media during that time, a few years ago, I was being bombarded on social media, demonizing the police, crucifying the police, and broad brush stroking them. And we don't broad brush stroke anybody, right? Is exactly what you're saying. We don't make these generalizations. And all of this to say that it creates a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety in our police officers. And that is one of the reasons why retention is bad and recruitment is bad. And they're suffering. Davie Police is hiring, by the way. I always like to shameless plug them. They're one of our partners. I love them so much.
Wonderful partner, yeah.
Absolutely. And like, they take care of their people, like Sheriff Ivy. They take care of their people. But they'll be the first to punish if it's warranted. So how do you deal with the demonization piece and mental health?
Well, just to say one thing that you were referencing, because there is one, in my opinion, there's one significant difference in how Davie approaches that very issue, or Sheriff Ivy, because Sheriff Ivy and Sheriff Kinsey do the same thing. They speak with confidence, because 100% of the time, or nearly 100% of the time, they have their officers back if that's appropriate. But they also are not afraid to evaluate appropriately if something did not go exactly the way that they were either trained or had hoped to occur. I respect that. I admire that because I'm still of the school that, you know, not everybody in every group is going to be perfect. They're not going to do the right thing all the time. Again, we're human beings and we make mistakes. I always tell everybody I make mistakes all day long. So don't ever be afraid to say, whoops, my bad. How can I, you know, make up for this in some way? I think that that's a thing that's forgotten, but is very, very important. But I do think to look at the how do I avoid that or not be so drawn into that is to look at the totality of everything, because I do think that it's spotlighted. And again, it's my bias maybe, but the spotlighting of, you know, kind of looking for different angles, almost in my mind, sometimes reading articles that are wishing that it would come out a certain way. And I know I'm not alone because sometimes I read those editorials that people take the time to write into the newspapers and things like that, and they'll have a similar, you know, observation that I might, but I don't think it's healthy to look at it through one lens. Again, does it ever happen like something like that when you referenced the knee on the neck and that? I mean, that's an obvious. Yes, that's an obvious. That's a criminal situation that needs to be punished. But by the way, there were many officers around the country that would react the same way as I am, as that you are. You know, take the school shooting in out west. I forget the area, but it was that small area, I think in Arizona. And you know, the police didn't go in immediately when they could have, when there was a door ajar or whatever it was. So, you know, yeah, I think there was a failure on that part. But I like to step back and look at the totality, because there are nowadays so many players in everything, and you know, everyone has an agenda. So what I say to our folks inside, I've said for the last 7 years. My guess is that you're here to teach, to transfer your knowledge to the student. If that's the case, then if you're doing it correctly, then you will be teaching across the entire spectrum of the theory, right? Because really, in the end, we want our students to have all the knowledge at their fingertips, to make their own decisions, to make their own judgments, to go forth with whatever drives them and their passion. And that is not a responsibility that I would take. And I don't think any of our faculty do that as well. I think that they present the opportunity, they teach across both areas or spectrums, if you will, and then they allow the student to take all that in and see for themselves. And sometimes that can generate some really great discussion, because again, it's not an all or, you know, it's not an all one thing. It's usually a culmination of a lot of different areas.
Right. I want to switch a little bit. I really would like two last questions before we go to the chat, because there's the chat's blowing up, YouTube's blowing up, and also we have a very, very nice audience tonight, both in the webinar as well as on YouTube.
Great.
Yeah. So
They're all my family. No, I'm just kidding.
no, and your fans, your fans and your family. But what I did want to ask you is for you to share a little bit about what are we doing to prepare police officers, or just, you know, criminal justice practitioners, criminal justice clinicians, practitioners, you know, on the job. They graduate with us with an undergrad in whatever School of Criminal Justice, Department of Human Services, or education, and they're the leaders. They're the new generation.
They are.
How are we preparing them, and in like what are some of the methods that we use? And I can jump into with, you know,
Yeah.
justice
Well,
stuff. But what do you
I'm always, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm always going to feel like we could do more. I would love to, you know, write grants and study all kinds of different areas. I mean, I realize with our other colleagues and collaborators at the university, we have lots of things going on as far as studies, you know, stress reduction in dispatchers, or, you know, what are some sure signs of stress for a law enforcement officer, and then how to intervene. Any stigma, we talked about that, stigma associated with you know, having issues and wanting to seek out help. Avenues for how to do that without, you know, damaging the individual and getting them the help that they need. having professors like yourself, and, our other professors in the college, I think is important because each brings a different perspective. All of these are very, very valuable to the student, but I would like to create more partnerships as you've started to do. I encourage that. The partnership that we have with the Davie Police Department is just amazing. They're so open to everything that we would like to do. We do have a longstanding partnership with Broward Sheriff's Office. The sheriff, as you know, graduated from our PhD, and he does believe in education. He does hold his deputies accountable. And at times, I think the sheriff pays a price for that, at a certain level that, again, if you don't understand the totality of the situation, then you're going to run into constant criticism. And I think that's difficult for anybody. But
Yes.
there are certain people out there that I think are doing the best job and a great job in trying to come up with other partnerships, other tools. Training to me is very, very important. It shouldn't be a one and done. I think it should be an ongoing training situation. If you think about it really is just part of the routine. But if you think about, part of what I've been around before in the different units is canine, and canines, they have a day of the week, and regardless, rain or shine, they train on that day. So that dog has to train and understand and know, and that's just from continually doing it again and again and again and again. I still think there's going to be times and places and issues and events that crop up that you have to react very, very quickly, and your judgment has to be in check. So it's important that you take care of yourself, your health, and your mental health as well. It has to be a balance. But I always think, Dr. T, that we could do more. And I always think it lies in the partnerships, because I do think that we have, as an academic unit, we have so much to give. And I think that those receptive, like you mentioned, Sheriff Ivy, and by the way, Junie passing, recently was just heartbreaking to watch, his bloodhound. But having a partner like that, who is just so welcoming to our students and really making them feel like you were supposed to be here this day, and you were so wanted, and we're so glad you're here. And now we're going to talk to you about some of the areas. And he's very proud of that. And by the same token, I see that in Davie Police Department as well. So I think it's more training, and it's more community partnerships.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're saying that, because that's going to be my vision, going forward, is to not only expand our partnerships with various criminal justice agencies, so not just specific to law enforcement, but I'm meeting next week with Chief Mortham, Stacy Mortham. She's the chief of the Bureau of Education for all Florida Department of Corrections. So we till this point, we haven't had a partnership with anyone from corrections, because as everybody know, and especially our criminal justice students, they know, it's police, it's courts, and it's corrections. And I think we're pretty good with police, but I'm not saying we're done, but I'm saying we have a lot of partnerships with various police departments and sheriff's offices, but we're lacking a little bit in the corrections area. So this is going to be something that's really great. She invited me to Lowell Prison in Ocala,
Right.
and she invited me to a graduation. So I'm going to go to the graduation and talk to her and meet with her and see how we can, maybe get an internship, or she's in charge of all Florida Department of Corrections education. So we can do trainings, we can partner. I'm excited about that. The courts, the 17th Judicial Court is a really amazing partner. Melinda Blostein, she's from the Public Defender's Office. All these people, Judge Ari Porth. It's really cool. It's cool. It's cool for two reasons. Not just to partner with these folks because we just want to. It's valuable because we then create internships. We then create experiences, field experiences, and for lack of a better word, a tour. But it's a tour. It's an educational tour. So it's an educational excursion, and our students, I mean, I think our students are really starting to get excited about the School of Criminal Justice. And
They are. And that's part of our strategic plan is implanting more outside the classroom activities or experiential learning opportunities. And I told you the other day, you're way ahead of the pack on that. So you're a great model to follow, but you're always thinking about those things because I do believe that the students, they inherently know that there's this number of credits and these classes that they have to take. And I do know that most of our faculty are very engaging with them in the classroom, but I think it's really beneficial outside that classroom to put in the time with them to establish those really, really meaningful experiences, because I think many of them spark, passions in people, and it may lead them down a different path, or it may say to them, this is not for me. Maybe it pushes them in a different direction. You don't know. But I think that is a role for us, that we have those connections. I think we should make them and then pave the pathway for the student.
it 100% is our role, right? My role, speak for myself again. Not only am I teaching a class, but I'm supposed to be a mentor.
That's right.
You know, uh, it's very, very simple to me to guide and nurture and raise up these students. I'm particularly love my undergrads, but I also really love the PhD students too. I mean, I'm not saying I don't love the master's students. Also, whoever I'm teaching, I'm 100% in,
You
right,
are.
with them,
Well,
invested with them. But what I've noticed is, people like Layla Horton, people like Justin Campbell, people
right.
like Brendan Callanan, people like Josh Enfinger. I mean, I'm naming these people. They were all students like that I took under my wing, and they've blossomed. Like
Yes,
each one of them.
yes, and they very, very much resonate towards everything that you put in front of them, which is a great compliment, because it showed that they had a lot of trust in you, which I think is warranted.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a team. It's like, because you're the leader and you set the tone. So you make us, I see Dana Mills is on. I know that Dr. Castro was on watching. But you make us, this is like a line right out of It As Good As It Gets, but you make us want to be better. Like you make us want to be better professors, better academics, better scholars, better practitioners, because of you. Really, it is your leadership, and
Well,
I
I think,
want to honor that.
there's some of that, sure, maybe, but I do think it's creating a pathway for people that would maybe not know how to approach, creating something and opening for them, and then just taking your hands off the wheel and creating some trust and letting people go and turn things into what we have.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some of the people that are watching, all of them have accomplished so much with what, opportunities that they've been able to create. Dr. Mills is accredited with bringing on the incentive for the research that we're introducing, and now, it's going to be showcased across the university because it's such a novel idea. Hopefully other units will follow in his footsteps. Equally though, he also, as well as Dr. Castro, are very, very devoted, just like you, to students. It's amazing to listen. You can see changes in their voice, or they may tell me about, somebody that they recently interviewed and really wants to come into the college in one of our programs, and that what this person demonstrated that they could do, or it's being a part of their journey. If I think about Dr. Castro and how devoted he is to interviewing every single student that wants to go into the PhD program, and also knowing everybody and their journey and why they want to be on that journey for an EDD in Puerto Rico. So I just think that there's a devotion there, but that's part of the success. But it isn't just me. It's these people. It's giving them an opportunity, which I think strategy wise, I'm pretty good at picking those out.
Yeah. So listen, look, everything's blowing up. The chat is blowing up, in the webinar is blowing up on YouTube. I'm going to ask Annie to come on. And Annie, which ones are you going to tackle? And there's a lot, so we're not going to get to all of them because we only have about 16 minutes left. So we're going to pick the best ones. I mean, there is one that I'm going to just read to you.
Okay.
Oh, he took it off. Dr. Castro wanted to know something about your chocolate. You have like you love chocolate,
Oh, I do.
something like
And
that. He
yeah,
deleted it.
wherever Dr. Castro ends up taking students, he does study abroad for us. And whenever he goes, most of the time he brings me back these really unique chocolates or macaroons or something like that that you couldn't buy here, that I could savor delightfully. Yeah, he knows that weakness of
But he
mine.
never actually brings enough of it.
Oh, no.
Isn't that
No.
true?
No,
Oh, no.
because he's very conscious of that. I don't want to be seen as, well, first of all, I won't share, but second of all, I don't want to be seen as a glutton or something.
Right.
So he limits it.
Go ahead, Annie. Take it away. What are you going to do? You're going to tackle the YouTube or you're going to tackle the webinar?
I've got some questions from the webinar. So first
Okay,
and
very
foremost,
good.
hi, Durham. Thank you for being here
Excellent.
today. Um,
Hey, by the
so
way, I know that you have formally met the dean before on several occasions, but just so you know, Dr. Durham, Annie, of course, is graduating from the College of Psychology. She's looking to continue her education, probably with us, not sure yet, but in a master's in psychology. So she's really walking in your footsteps. Go ahead.
Oh, Andy, this is wonderful news. What's it going to take to sway you over our way?
no, I'm pretty heavily swayed. So I just need to finish like application stuff and everything. But my my gaze is at NSU, so I'm probably staying here.
Good.
Yeah.
Which is excellent because she gets to stay then as an officer in Stage for Change. But
That's the
go ahead,
best
Annie.
news of all.
Yeah,
That's
go ahead, Annie. Go.
So the first question that we have for you is from Dave. So Dave asked, "What are some unusual challenges that arise by being the dean of the school or a dean of the school?"
I saw Dave's question. It was the first one before we went live. I thought it was such a great question because it is the reason that I went into administration many years ago. My father was in business, so and any job I took, except for one, I worked an all-night shift in the state hospital before they closed it, which was really an eye-opener, sad too. But always in business. I like administration because I like that there's something new every day. I mean, there are routine things, budget is probably the most routine thing that gets the most attention, for sure daily. But then there are some things that could come up that you would not expect. You could do the best training, Dave, in anything that you wanted to accomplish. You've covered every aspect of, let's say it's a study abroad trip, you've covered every aspect of what you hope to accomplish, and then something occurs out of your control, but you really need to react quickly, and you need to think, 4, 5, 6 paces ahead. Who needs to get notified? What's the first thing that could happen? Is this something that could blow up? Is this something that would be a negative mark on the university? How best to handle, how best to present it? I guess the one that is the most, the one I'll remember the most is when COVID hit. So when COVID hit, we were just bringing back a group of students from Ireland. It was an Ireland trip. So sometime between JFK and Miami, I was sitting home and I was getting, routine texts from the chaperones. And they said that some of the folks weren't feeling too well in New York. And it was very, very brand new. There was only really a few cases, even getting airtime or, on the local news, but in the Northeast section. So something just crossed my mind. I just said, is it possible that that could be what it is? So by the time they landed in Miami, they split up because some of the students had to go back and different places, and one of our folks ended up staying, a chaperone, staying overnight and not wanting to make the trip to St. Pete. Again, tired, late night. But that turned into a pretty long term, staying on top of many cases for weeks and weeks in a row. it turns out that it was COVID. And I'm happy to say that everybody got through it. But it was new to everybody. It was a struggle. You do what you have to do in the moment. I did find myself later that evening wanting to make sure, I guess it was the next evening, because the one person was transported to a hospital in Davie. So I wanted to make sure that that person had everything that they needed because they left everything behind in the hotel the night before. So I found myself in Target, just taking one of those big bags and shoving all those travel size, whatever I could get my hands on, and rushing to the hospital to deliver those. And it was pretty surreal because when you think about COVID at the height, everybody was masked up. And if you did unfortunately have somebody that was close to you that was in a hospital setting, you could get nowhere near that. But in the very beginning, when they were still unsure, I mean, I found myself with two bags on the ICU floor making a delivery, and really only one head nurse sort of ushered me out pretty aggressively and quickly. And now I know why. But that was a challenge. That was a challenge because it eventually got the entire universe, as things spread, not necessarily because of us, but as things spread, it got the entire university involved. And Dr. Hanbury had to make some difficult decisions, university-wide. But we as administrators were on Zoom every morning at 8:30 to go through a briefing. We had a lot of people connected to CDC and Johns Hopkins, and they were looking at data overnight, synthesizing things, and then coming up. The good news for our college is that most of our programs are online, so we didn't miss a beat. I was really happy with all of our faculty and their flexibility. But that's my answer to Dave, in that's probably the most unique situation. But I like administration in general because it's always something new.
Excellent. All right, Annie. I'm thinking one more from the webinar, if you don't mind. I know that there's a lot. I know Jennifer just posted something, so did Tia. I don't know. I'm just going to let you pick the one that you feel like is maybe we have not discussed already. And then we'll go to Eddie for the YouTube chat. And then again, I'm going to ask Eddie maybe to pick three top ones, top questions. A lot of this we've already touched upon in the dean's answers.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eddie.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of them. You've got a lot of fans here that want to know a lot about you. I'm gonna go with this one. I think it's a bit more applicable. Because you talked a bit about mental health and things relating to families. But Ebony Brown asked specifically, what advice would you give other parents whose children are considering a career in policing or law enforcement?
That's a difficult one. I guess I would liken. I guess my answer will fall along the lines of my own journey, and that is that I mean, I love children, but I only had one child, and he really wanted to do this or join the military as it was at first. I really had to make a decision as a parent. I think we all have different goals, but one commonality if we're parents is that we would like to raise happy, healthy, independent children. And I got behind that 100% and said, I have to push my fears aside so that they don't get in the way, and let my son do what he wants to do and blossom. So I would encourage those families that have children that are thinking about going into law enforcement. Listen, if this is their passion, it is an absolutely wonderful profession. If this is their passion, I would just have a little soul searching within yourself and make sure that it's not you that's driving them to meet your goals. Make sure that you're hanging back, but you're supportive, but it turns out to be their goals. And then I would 100%, 110% support them.
All right, excellent. Thank you. So let's get Eddie on, and we're going to wrap this up with our YouTube folks. Where's Eddie? There's Eddie.
Hello.
Eddie, by the way, is Fischler Academy. So I just
Hi,
wanted,
Eddie.
I wanted the dean to know that. All right.
That's me.
Okay, Eddie, go ahead. Let's pick three. Okay, three good
Okay.
ones.
I will say a lot of the YouTube is more comments than it is questions. People just had so much to say.
Yeah.
Let's see. Jamie McCarthy asked, has being the mother of a police officer ever challenged or reinforced your beliefs about psychology and human behavior?
Yes. And I think I'm thinking of different scenarios or different events. Yes, because I've seen similar sorts of incidents with different reactions from different officers. And it brings me right back to, I guess the baseline would be for me, everybody's human. So sometimes, we're not always going to have, all of us, a good day, or not the greatest day, or that wasn't our greatest best foot forward kind of a thing. But yeah, I think it's challenged things in some ways. It's just not a perfect world, and where we are right now is difficult. I would like I would like things actually at any time. I would like that pendulum that swings back and forth. I would like it to swing to center where kind of everybody is getting some piece of everything, and that is the key, that there's peace.
Great. All right, Eddie, let's get the second one out.
All right. Tom Gainey asked Dr. Durham, what do I need to do to minimize my mom's anxiety?
Good question.
Well, yeah, it is a good question. And that must be a really difficult situation. But here's what I would say. The more confident you are in your choices, and I don't know if you're law enforcement yet or you're moving in that direction, but the more confident you are, it will eventually, I can almost promise you, it will minimize over time your mother's anxiety, because in an odd way, she will realize that you don't need her in that capacity, that you've graduated to the level of independence, you're confident about it, you're happy about your choices, you're passionate, and you got this. You're still a part of that person's life forever, in a major way, and in a positive, contributing way. But they won't need you, and you'll realize that. So just keep trying.
Okay, one last one, Eddie. Go ahead.
All right. Keandra asked, as a mother to an officer, do you find yourself disagreeing with your son's choices, and how did you overcome that disagreement?
I'm trying to think back, because there was one issue in particular where I had a differing opinion. It was something that made the news. And then he had a completely opposite reaction. Actually, and this speaks to the prior question of the mother, how does that person help their mother overcome the anxiety? And this is where it really counts. As I'm having the discussion with my son about, did you see that in the paper? And their response was, yeah, I saw it. I know the guy, this or that or whatever the incident was. I can't remember it, but the outcome I do remember, because I said, well, I just think that's awful. I think that, that should be checked out or something like that. And he said, well, you don't know the entire story though. And I said, well, do you? Were you there? He goes, no, I wasn't there, but he said, I get the radio calls. I'm part of that. And then he went on to say a few more things that were more technical, things that I really probably wouldn't understand in the face of things, be it legal or whatever the situation was. But here's what my reaction was. I won't ever say that I said, oh, I said I can see your point, which in his mind was sort of agreement, tacit agreement, if you will. But I did make the switch on the emotion side of things. In other words, what I saw in him was a well thought out, clearly informed, confident Not afraid to, I mean, again, I'm his mother, very respectful, but not afraid to deliver to me what he, as the expert in that area, saw. So that made me more happy than me being right, if that makes sense.
Great. So, Eddie, that's about it, right, for now, because we're right at the top of the hour anyways. And so I'm gonna, the dean has been giving us all of these gems, and I'm gonna ask her for one more gem, and that is any final thoughts that she would like to tell our prospective students, students that we already have, viewers that are going to be watching, this in the archived, recordings or whatever. So,
Well,
last,
even though we're talking about law enforcement and everything else, I know there's probably some people on that maybe they're not going for law enforcement. But I do want to say to all the students that are out there, or anybody in general, I think it's just really, really important, especially when times are difficult or you're having some challenges in whatever way they manifest themselves. I know it's cliche, but I just think it's really important to continue to look back or find that positivity or that passion that drives you every day, because you will get through this. As Tammy says to me, we will find another way, which that's the beauty of being close to somebody or a partnership, or if you get to work with a Dr. Telesco and they bring you all these kinds of wonderful opportunities for students, which again, it makes me very happy that we're doing something right if we've got happy, passionate students, or you have somebody like Dana who is, reaching out to students at the undergraduate level to say, hey, are you interested in this research opportunity? Or how about I show you how to write a grant? Or you're creating pathways for these individuals, for all of you that are going to go into the future and be our next leadership. And I hope you look at the totality of situations before passing judgments. I think that's very important. Be kind to people, be empathic to people. Sometimes they're at a road which is a crossroads for them, and they don't know exactly how to respond. Be a shoulder for them, be an ear for them. And then in the end, always meet somebody like Dr. Castro, who is a very, very positive individual, no matter what, and no matter what the challenges are. He will always bring you back to some positive aspect and in a very genuine way. So I hope everybody enjoyed tonight. I certainly did. I thank you, Dr. Telesco and Eddie and all the students, because it's just been such an honor. I really liked it.
Well, thank you so much. Again, you're the executive producer of Investigation with Dr. T. And yeah, in all fairness, it's the leader sets the tone at the top, and then keeps these brilliant people around her, right? And so you've got Dr. Castro. He's amazing, and he's my direct supervisor. He's my direct boss, and I love him. I love him, even though he only brings like a little bit of chocolate, like it's like a tease, a little bit. It's okay.
Did you ask him, by the way, if he's eaten it all before he arrived at your office to deliver? Because I've always suspected that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm always surprised at the very small little tiny box. It's a very small box. Anyway, we're just teasing him. We're teasing him because we know he's watching anyway. So thank you again, Dean, for taking the time out of your extremely slammed schedule to be with us tonight. And I want to thank again the production team, our students, and we will see everyone next week, right? Eddie and Annie, who's next week? It's right on the tip of my tongue.
I believe that is.
And all my students, while they're looking that up, please make sure that you email me. It's very important. PhD students, all the special topic students, anybody who's watching has to email me right now and tell me that so you can get your credit, right? So Eddie, who's up next week?
Next week is Ronaldo Franklin and Michelle Amaglio.
Amazing. These are our new Homeland Security Investigation Division friends, colleagues, and new partners. We've been partnered now with Homeland Security as a result of, and a big thank you to Professor Thomas Roberts, who's also he's not only married to our dearest Maribel Del Rio, but he's also in the investigations division of Homeland Security, and he's one of our adjuncts. So thanks to him, he's helped us get an in. And Reynaldo Franklin and the other special agent that's going to come on talking about human trafficking. And P.S. back at the ranch, I can say that now. I always say that. Now it really means something. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, Agent Franklin is also going to be on a panel for the Ensuring Safety Conference, and that's April 22nd. So if you're interested in a free, amazing conference, make sure that you register. You could reach out to me. And this is also goes to our students, our PhD students, our undergrads, anybody who's watching, even in the recording, if they're watching the recording, please make sure you reach out to us if you want to attend, because there's a flyer, there's a QR code, and you could register. It's free. It's an all-day conference. We have great, great speakers. And that's it. So thank you again for watching us, and we'll see you next time.